Just a couple of funny facts, if that's the right word to choose. My cursory research into these matters, and it has been very cursory, has revealed that the population of Monaco stands just shy of 40,000, of whom about 8,000 are Monegasque, as in native. Monegasque is the word for what we would probably lazily and monoglottishly describe as Monacan or something like that. So if you wanted to talk about a territory where the native-born population is horribly outnumbered, if that is the kind of language you like, or just massively outnumbered, if you want to confine yourself to facts rather than feelings, then Monaco, where Jim Ratcliffe is in fact an immigrant, would be absolutely top of the list. And, of course, the other elements of his ludicrous comments are, or display, complete ignorance of what colonised means, complete ignorance of our economy and the relationship between immigration and wage growth, and complete ignorance about the actual numbers. The statistics that he cites are completely wrong. If he was that wrong when putting together some of the chemicals that he has made his fortune from selling, then people would probably die. Ignorance kills in many fields. In this particular field, talking about immigration, well, of course it can kill racism, as we know. I was in court yesterday to see the latest case being brought against a British newspaper, and it involves the mother of a man who was killed by racism, or by racists. Doreen Lawrence is one of the people bringing the case against the Daily Mail group. I'll tell you a little bit more about what I saw in court yesterday later in the programme. But it's just worth noting that if Sir Jim Ratcliffe were displaying such absolute ignorance in other fields, nobody would be sitting here wondering whether he might perhaps have a point. And that's where we've come to now. Here is somebody saying something very racist, very wrong, very unpleasant and very offensive. Shall I now take calls from people who are completely unaffected by his comments, who want to argue that it's not offensive at all? No. Shall I now take calls from people who want to completely ignore the fact that this is racist, wrong, and factually stupid, and pretend that it isn't, or does he perhaps have a point? I mean, what would you have to say to set that phoning up? Well, he's wrong about the facts, and he's wrong about the reality, but he has a point, doesn't he? What does that mean? Should we dig into that first this morning? Well, he's wrong about the facts, and he's wrong about the numbers, and he's wrong about the people, and he's wrong about the country, but he kind of has a point, doesn't he? Well, what point does he have? You know what point he has. You may be nodding along with it. You may be absolutely welcoming the people who allow you to pretend that this is anything other than what you know in what passes for your soul. You know what this is. This is an invitation to articulate the fact that when you see a face that isn't white, you don't like it. That's all this is. Should Jim Ratcliffe apologise? Does Jim Ratcliffe have a point? Every other phone in on the planet will be dancing around this simple fact. Give me a ring and admit to me that you don't like seeing non-white faces. That would be the only honest phone in to have in the context of these comments. With people who are not, of course, directly affected by racism. A long queue of white people who would be poised to argue either that this isn't offensive or that he has a point. He doesn't have a point. How can you tell whether someone's an immigrant or not just by looking at them? Oh, wait. Seriously, how can you tell? You can't. So how can you tell? Who's he talking about? He's not talking about people he's counted because his numbers are absolutely bogus. Oh, yeah, of course. I don't know. Oh, yeah, that must be an immigrant because they're not white. Can't be English if you're brown. Rishi Sunak can't be English was a recent radio phone in elsewhere. These are not debates. These are invitations to racists to articulate things in public that they've been too ashamed to say out loud for a generation. The triumph of what was called political correctness was that these words, these languages, these attitudes were excised from public discourse. They were confined to the dark corners of UKIP meetings or Nigel Farage's sitting room. They were not permitted, they were certainly not welcomed into polite society. the idea that a Conservative politician could complain about the number of non-white faces he saw on the streets of a British city would have been a sackable offence under every single Conservative leader since at least Ted Heath and probably Macmillan, but not under Cammy Badenoch. You're just seeing the erosion of decency in this country at the moment, and the ultimate irony is that the people doing it are the people most responsible for many of the problems that we're currently facing, because Jim Ratcliffe was, wait for it, a Brexiter. So inflicting economic damage upon a country he no longer lives in to go to help colonise Monaco by outnumbering the actual native residents by a ratio of about 4-1, and then offering up a statistically illiterate description of the United Kingdom. And, I don't know, sitting back and lighting a cigar while the erosion of decency in this country moves one notch further. Give me a ring and tell me how racist you are on a scale of 1 to 10. Is that the phone in? Give me a ring and tell me how upset you are when you see a brown face on the television or possibly on your own street. Vote Labour if you want an N-word for a neighbour is a poster that went up on the streets of Birmingham within living memory. And we're heading back in that direction. We're heading back in that direction. And, everything I'm saying is just true. And you're perfectly entitled to be racist. I'm sorry, you're perfectly entitled to disagree with me. It's not illegal. There's some things you won't be allowed to do in public at the moment. For example, call for a hotel full of people who've done absolutely nothing wrong to be set fire to in their beds. But you'll be bestowed hero status by Nigel Farage and his mates if you do that. If you break the law by encouraging people to burn human beings to death in their beds for the crime of having been born brown, then you will be rendered a hero in the pages of some newspapers and in the eyes of some politicians. So what is the phone-in? Because it's none of the ones that anybody else is going to have. They are not debatable points. His numbers are wrong. His conscience is screwed. His qualifications are zero. His input is vile. His words are racist. Facts, not opinions, just counting. So, how do we have a phone-in about it? The UK has been colonised by immigrants, really, hasn't it? I mean, what sort of telescope is he looking at the country through from his Monaco mansion? I can't even begin to imagine how warped your brain has to be to arrive at a conclusion like this. We also fetishise wealth, don't we? I mean, Elon Musk, if Elon Musk has taught us anything, it's that you can make immense amounts of money and still be a complete prat. And to be a little bit more sympathetic, perhaps, you can make immense amounts of money, you can be some of the richest men in the world and still be obviously and measurably miserable. You can still be consumed by precisely the sort of bigotries and ignorances that they like to pretend are somehow the preserve of the working class. Two things going on. We fetishise wealth. We think that because someone's made an awful lot of money, they must have a skill set that qualifies them to contribute to other conversations. Oh, he's made an awful lot of money. I bet he'll be good at running a football team. Oh, he's made an awful lot of money. We should listen to his comments about immigration. He's made an awful lot of money. Balzac or Tolstoy, I never remember which one. Behind every great fortune, there is a great crime. It doesn't have to be a crime in legalistic terms, but in moralistic terms, it almost always is. I used to cite Bill Gates at this point as a rare exception to the rule, but he's all over the Epstein file, so I'm not even sure we can do that anymore. And the other bit of this is that racists love to pretend that it's a working class trope. Middle class and upper class racists absolutely love to pretend that these are working class concerns when they're nothing of the sort. You can sit in a mansion in Monaco and be a massive racist and pretend that you're somehow voicing the concerns of the silent majority. Spoiler alert, they're not silent and they're not a majority, but they are racists. They are people who see a face that is brown and have a negative reaction. They are people who see a crime committed by someone who is brown and openly admit now that they think that's much worse than when an identical crime is committed by someone who is white. It is the erosion of decency. And if we are really to start complaining about colonisation, then you can only conclude that you're dealing with someone who's never opened, let alone read a history book. Because that is hypocrisy on a scale that would be visible from space. So they fetishise wealth, they demonise the working class or ordinary people, and they also, of course, have a completely bogus memory of what this country used to be like. It's like a kind of Facebook meme made flesh. And because he's very, very rich, it's a very, very big story. I don't know whether he'll apologise, but if he does, he won't mean it, will he? He won't mean it. Next thing he'll do is probably join Reform. In fact, here he is. He praised Reform UK leader Nigel Farage, I'm not making this up, as an intelligent man. Nigel Farage is many things, but intelligent ain't one of them. Jim Ratcliffe is many things, but emotionally intelligent he is not. What is it like to be on the wrong end of this rhetoric? What's it like to be living in a country where racism has never been excised, but it used to be very much in retreat? I think sometimes those of us who have been and remain animated by all forms of bigotry and prejudice were a little unkind, a little unfair upon our native country when we complained about race. It was right to complain, and this may be, of course, white privilege talking. But we have been historically much, much better than many, if not all, other countries. We have been historically a country where people would feel welcome. And I'm not being naive. I know that we endured horrible, horrible people and positions and policies throughout the 1970s and well into the 1980s. But the sort of, the period from, and I don't know what dates you'd put on it, from maybe 1990 to 2010, it just felt, and again, I acknowledge this may be white privilege, but I really don't think it is. I was talking to Sadiq Khan about it on Tuesday, and he was simply describing what he would endure growing up, what people would shout at him on the streets of his Tooting council estate, and at his black friends as well. But he also described how his white friends would be as outraged by what was being shouted at him and his black friends as they were. There was a community, a sense of solidarity, something that to me is beautifully human. I was going to say British, but it can happen anywhere. It happens everywhere. There's something about immigration into this country, from the Commonwealth in particular, that should have created a much greater sense of cohesion, and for a while it looked like it was doing. But the P word and the N word are back on the lips of many people, both publicly and privately. Social media is awash with base and hideous racism. It has become a commoditized business model on Elon Musk's platform, where people are literally being sent checks by his company because racism triggers people, and triggering people creates responses. But I am a 54-year-old white man, and it don't really affect me. Breaks my heart. Sickens my patriotic soul, because I hate to see my own country get poisoned by people like Farage and Jim Ratcliffe and the other fella, Hester, who still hasn't had his money sent back by the Tory party, despite describing Diane Abbott as being somebody who makes him want to shoot black women. Straight into phone-in territory. Has he got a point? Should he apologise? It's incredible arrogance. Should he apologise? Has he got a point? Has he got a point? Should he apologise? No, he hasn't got a point. I don't care whether he apologises or not, because if he does, he won't mean it. This is what passes for his conscience. These are the views that he clearly holds in private, and he's so rich that when he shares them, nobody probably dares to say anything to him. Maybe, I don't know if he's got children. Often it's children who can stand up to their parents and point out that this is just unacceptable, but maybe there's nobody like that in his universe. Same with the Tory donor who said Diane Abbott made him want to hate all black women and that she should be shot, just to be technically correct on precisely what he said. So, I want you to tell me what it's like at the moment. A very prominent British Asian politician, I may have told you who it was in the past, but I can't remember whether or not I'm allowed to, told me about 3 or 4 years ago that they were looking at emigration, looking at, because the direction of the traffic in the country was so ugly. And I wanted to reassure them, but of course I'm not walking in their shoes. I wanted to tell them that things weren't that bad. But of course, that would be like me ringing in to a radio station to describe comments that are deeply offensive to someone else as not being offensive. That's an incredible position to adopt. Oh, this isn't offensive at all. What do you mean by that? Well, I'm white. Racism doesn't offend me. Yeah, but that's not really what offensive... Oh, never mind. Never mind. Let's go to the news. I want to know what it's like to be in a country where racism is back in fashion. What is it like as a member of an ethnic minority to be living in a country where racism is back in fashion? I wish there were a different phrase I could deploy at this moment, but I don't know what conversations you're having with your children about it, or with your partners, with your parents. Racism is back in fashion. Racism has, like flared trousers, come back round again and is back in fashion. It's still disgusting, it's still ignorant, it's still dangerous, but it's back in fashion. Jim Ratcliffe will suffer precisely no consequences for this. Precisely no consequences. Manchester United fans, much as I would like to get on my high horse and tell them that they should boycott the next game, come off it. It's not going to happen. Not on anything like a scale that would make a dent in this man's self-regard. We are living in a country where racism is back in fashion. We are living in a country where people are sticking tatty flags on lampposts to tell their brown neighbours that they're not welcome here. And the media will pretend that it's something else. Because much of the media is racist. People like Dick Littlejohn and Rod Liddell have been writing columns for years that have essentially excused racism. They even, I never remember which one it is, spells it with a W to try and make it sound that people, as if people pointing out racism have got a speech impediment that renders their position somehow less powerful or less valid. It's everywhere. But it's not been fashionable for a while. It's been shameful for a while. And it's no longer shameful enough. 0345 6060 973 is the number you need to tell me what it's like to be I hate to use the word victim because in some ways it emasculates you, but to be a victim of racism's return to fashion. What's it like, especially if you'd allowed yourself to relax 10 years ago? You'd thought to yourself, this is so much better than it was for my mum. This is so much better than it was for my dad. This is so much better than it was for me in the 1970s or the 1980s. But it's not better anymore.